Hello, this is Melissa, and it is Real History. Today is May the 18th, 2023, and I am joined in conversation by Michael from Sweden. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Melissa.
How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a very nice weather today.
Oh, good. What's it like?
For once. Well, today is about 25 degrees, so it's really nice to finally have some sun here.
So you don't get a lot of sunshine. I think maybe a lot of people from different parts of the world don't understand how short your days are in the winter. I had a friend that lived in Sweden working there for several years, and she said that she observed a lot of alcoholism amongst her fellow workers because it's just very depressing to be in a place that is dark so much of the day, and they have to do different things like, sun lamps and things to increase. And there are studies. I mean, she wasn't just making that up. There is, season, what they call seasonal affective disorder linked to alcoholism because people want to see the sun.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. I did not really drink too much until I came to Sweden.
Really?
Yeah. I can say that because I remember when I used to live in other countries, probably drink once a month, let's say. Mm-hmm. But in Sweden, it's extremely strange, especially in the winter, if you are not drinking, 5 beers a day. Let's say.
Really?
Some people still, it's extremely strange in that sense when it comes to winter. They call it the winter depression. Mm-hmm. And that is actually real. And I see people become so down and gloom because the weather is so gray. And when the snow doesn't fall, it's a lot grayer, and all you have is just gray. Every plant is dead and it's cold. So in a way, you don't see the sun for maybe 2-3 months. Mm-hmm. And the days are extremely short. It's dark by 3 p.m. So you can I can understand why people get extremely depressed by it, and once the sun comes out, everybody is totally different. So it does make me understand also why the old religions used to worship the sun, because it's living in this part of the world, you understand how or the effect it has on the person living here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. It's kind of funny if we think about your progression around the world. You've gone to increasingly dark places.
Yes.
It gets colder and darker as you go through your life. But psychologically, I think, and spiritually speaking, that is not true at all. But maybe you want to share where you're from and just a little bit of a...
Yes, I grew up in Ghana. And I left there when I was 12 because my mother met another man, and he was from Cyprus. So we moved to Cyprus at a very young age, me and my big sister. Mm-hmm. And there it was kind of good because the weather was pretty much similar to the African climate. Mm-hmm. And they had a very short winter. But for me, the language was extremely difficult, learning Greek and so on. Mm-hmm. But I was able to do that within the 5 years I was there.
And then you were about 18 when you left Cyprus?
18, 19, yes.
Okay.
Or I would say 20, because in Cyprus, when you finish high school and you are a citizen, you have to go to the military for 1 or 2 years.
Oh.
Yes, so I had to do 1 year in the military after high school.
How was that?
Well, I think it's one of those places where I realized that I'm an individual because I could not.
I have to say, I'm sorry, but Michael, that we were just doing our little sound test and we weren't recording. But I asked you, I said, well, we're in these times of woke and politically correct and everything, and I just want to know, how do you like to be referred to? Are you from? Do you say you're from Sweden? Are you from Ghana? Are you a black man? Are you African? I mean, how do you describe yourself? And you said, I'm an individual.
Yeah. Yes, and I think that is what I took from Alan's messages, because his description of an individual totally fits me. And when I read B.F. Skinner's behaviorism, the way he described the mass mind and the way he describes an individual, I just felt like I belong in the other category. So in a way, I had to learn to embrace that, through my life, but I never understood that I was an individual until I came across Alan's work, of course.
Mm-hmm. You just didn't fit into the way that you were told to go or told to think.
Yes, and that kind of started from a very young age, and where I was born in Ghana is an extremely remote place where you would say there are no electricity, lights, so people are still living with the moonlight in the night and also the fire as a light. Mm-hmm. So it's no electricity and it's not so developed. So in my world, when I was so young, I was still wondering, why is everything so, even though I hadn't seen anything else before, I was still questioning, why is things the way they are? Mm-hmm. And of course, the answer I would get when I was asking the adults were like, you ask too many questions. And so I developed this nickname as a child as an old man, because I was asking questions which the old people could not answer. Yes, so even my mom, she still called me the old man, because the question I'm asking, they don't really have answers for. Uh-huh. And when I listened to Alan's talk, he said that there are some people that have always been searching because they know something is wrong. And I felt that I belong in this category my whole life until I got the explanation for what it is, what really is the real truth.
Yeah, that's interesting. That they do say that about people. Oh, you're an old soul. Yeah. Alan would talk about when he was in school, the same thing that you're describing, asking questions that the adults had never considered, they didn't have the answer for. He described it like their eyes would just kind of start to, roll, or go back and forth, the sort of deer in headlights, it just stopped them, right? They had no place to go. It had never occurred to them, and, he said that he got a lot of, as a boy, well, why are you even thinking about that?
Yeah, that's also the same for me. Yeah, it's the same. And it's even, the difference with me now is that I don't need to, like Alan would say, I live more in my mind than to express what I really want to say. So, in a way, if I see something is wrong, I kind of now understand why, so I don't need to ask anybody about it. So that is a really good feeling to have that reference with the talks and everything Alan has provided, because that, in a way, I ask the question in my head and then I get the answer already. Yeah,
that's great. Can actually keep your own counsel.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So you learned in the army and in the military in Cyprus that you were an individual. Are there any examples of?
Yes, because Cyprus has a divided capital, because it was occupied by the Turkish Nicosia, the capital. So now if you go there, there's the north side of Cyprus and there is the real Cyprus, let's say. So they're extremely been fighting with each other for so many years. The European Union, Cyprus, I think the reason why the Turkish people cannot get into the European Union because they always veto their vote because of that occupation. Mm. And when I was in the military, as every military, they give a lot of propaganda. And for me, it was not adding up because I never saw or I never understood the hate for the other side or the other side's hate for this side. It was more like, why are two people not getting along, you know? And so when I was in the military, they were doing exercises about how we handle situations if this happens. And I'm thinking in my head, sorry, but I don't agree. I'm not going to do this. I'm really not going to do this. So in a way, I was so happy that I didn't have to ever go into the dangerous areas. But once I went to the border at the Nicosia, and one of our superiors, you say, it was like, you need to be alert because the Turkish soldiers are on the other side of this border. And I was extremely relaxed as always because I'm like, I'm sorry, but if I don't try to hurt somebody, I don't think they will try to hurt me either. So I had a totally different mentality compared to the other Cypriots. They were extremely agitated and ready to, fight if there was. But I was totally the opposite. Like, guys, I don't think anybody will hurt you if you don't try to hurt them. Mm-hmm. So everything that all the messages I was getting were not adding up. And also during my high school in Cyprus, they tried to show videos of their past wars with the Turkish side. So in a way, they were creating a lot of video images for people to be extremely nationalist in a way. Mm-hmm. And how demonizing the enemy. And it's exactly the same thing that I had to experience in Ghana, but I was so young, I did not understand that was actually a technique and a way to brainwash people. Because in Ghana, they also try to indoctrinate the people and let them know that the Caucasian is their enemy in a way, because the history is we have been occupied and, resources has been taken by this, by that, by this. So it's a lot of brainwashing going on at schools just to make you have an enemy. Mm-hmm. And I have friends of people I know who cannot go above that level because to them, their lands, their resource has been taken not by a certain group, but by a whole race of Caucasian. So, mm-hmm. The thinking there...
Go ahead.
Yes, the thinking there is extremely basic. And I felt that it's the same with the Swedish culture, where they are supposed to be extremely open to other cultures. So you could say that the Swedish culture is the opposite of the Cypriot culture, where they are extremely close group. The Swedish way is that you are supposed to be open for everything. Mm-hmm. And that is also one of the reasons why I was not surprised that they were the ones that they introduced the free love to, and also now transgender and everything happening in the world started in Sweden.
Yes, I mean, it's debatable. Does everything in the world start in California or does it start in Sweden? but I think, remember how Alan would talk about countries or places being test beds for certain ideas? Yeah. Well, yes. Sweden has definitely been a test bed for a lot of these kinds of ideas. It's not at the tip of my brain, so to speak, but there was something that I was researching last year, and I learned that Sweden's program for the stay-at-home dads and the basically what you might call a reversal of the roles, where they were encouraging. See, I don't know now how long the Swedish so-called maternity or paternity pay is, but it's very, very long. But it's heavily slanted to keep the father at home and to break that traditional role. Well, that has actually been going on from approaching 50 years, I think.
Yeah, it's true. And even at work, you have people going on maternity leave, but they are fathers. Because the way it was when I first came, 2011, was that you have a certain amount of days, which is split for both parents, but the man could give his days to the woman, and the woman could stay home longer, and the man could work instead. But I think in 2015, they got rid of that rule, that the man has to take his days and he cannot give it to the woman. So,
because if you think about the social engineering behind that, there is something. I mean, what you can't do is social engineer nature, although they try and they try and they try, but nature will have its way. And so the woman who has a child, has a baby, there's a natural bonding that occurs. She obviously wants to be the one who's providing that initial care. But if you have a country then that says, oh no, the father can't give those extra days to allow his wife to be the one to do this is social engineering. Yeah,
and they make it extremely attractive by paying 85% of your salary. So in a way, you might lose a little bit money, but the strange thing I'm seeing is that before they change the rules, most men will not want to stay home. They rather give the days to the mother. But I think even now that you have a split, like for me, myself, I still would not use those days because I rather me work than my wife work, because I know how important it is for the children to bond with the mother. And I think one thing I took from Alan's talk is that the natural conversations with the mother and the child cannot be replicated with the father and the child, because it's such a different bond. What they would tell their mom, they cannot tell their father. So it's nature, it's natural. You can't change that. So I kind of embrace that and try to do what a man is supposed to do, which is provide for the family. And if the mother can work as less as possible, even better. But the Swedish way is changing so much that it's going to the opposite direction, where the man needs to stay home more than the woman.
You also talked on about the free love and everything, and this was, Sweden was a test bed there. And again, I don't want to make out, all Swedish people are this way, or all Swedish women are that way. But, Alan talked to me about travels in the music business, and he spent a lot of time in the Scandinavian countries with music, and that he said that there were obvious things that were being promoted many years ago that had to do with the absolute that there could not be any idea that the sexual act was between one man and one woman, and that it was special. It was the complete opposite was being promoted from the top in Sweden.
Yeah, that is true. And it's even worse now, because I think one of the thing I observed the most in Sweden is how they had one of the highest rate of divorces. And those numbers, I read about it, but to experience it and to see people around you, that every family is breaking up, because I think this is also tied to the fact that they are trying to change what a woman is in Sweden, in a way, because the mothers are not staying home long enough, that they are bonding with the child so much. So when the child is growing up and there are difficulties with the child, which that's also something I've observed, that there are so many children that have this ADHD, And when I go to pick up my daughters from school, you can see those children that they are not the norm, or they are not as calm as it should be, and that used to be an observation which I could see in boys, but now I can see it in the females also, the young females, and it's so strange because I think 5-year-old, they're already diagnosing them with ADHD and so on, and if your child is diagnosed, you have to get help from the government for them to help at the school or the nursery which they are going to. And those numbers are going up. I just read about it, but to see it in real life is extremely like, wow, this is real, And when you hear the parents talk, it's not about activating the child. It's more like, yeah, we need to go see the psychologist to get a pill to calm the child down because they are hyperactive.
This is it's total warfare. Again, in nature, you'd observe this, especially growing up in Africa, in an area where you don't have electricity. You're much more tied to the land. You know that boys like to run.
Yeah.
They like to burn off enormous amounts of energy, which they have all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
This is being called a disease. Yeah. This is a disease.
Yes. So if you're energetic, you have a disease.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is criminal.
Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad because the parents also take the advice of the professionals and they give their children the pill. And of course, one of the biggest problem here in Sweden is that they have one of the highest rates of antidepressants. So the parents are already on, let's say, antidepressants, so they will, of course, be much more willing to also put their children on something mild. That's one thing. When I came here, I had no idea what antidepressants were. But when I talked to people, they're like, yeah, I couldn't drink too much this weekend because of the pill. And I'm like, what pill? Am I missing something here? And then it was such a open talk. Yes, I'm on the pill. And what pill? But mostly men, are on antidepressants, which is so strange. And if you're on those antidepressants, you get extremely drunk by just very little alcohol. And also the weight gain from that. So when I used to train people as a personal trainer, I would ask them, what are you doing so different that you are putting on so much weight? And people would normally say that it's because of the pill. That the side effect of it is also putting on the weight. People were extremely okay with it until I came across one guy that said, I was not so great when I got subscribed the pills, but now I feel like killing myself. I've gone it's become that worse. But because the government policy, you cannot deny it in a way.
What do you mean? You mean you can't say no?
Yeah, because if in Sweden, you can get some time off work if you go to the psychologist and say that you are not feeling so great and stressed out and life is not great. The theme is to promote you the antidepressants. And when you're on that, you get a sick leave, which the company and the government pay your salary in a way. So that is also extremely attractive to people that are already lost in their lives and they cannot find any hope anywhere else. But they get worse from it. And most people don't talk about it, but I came across one guy that was talking about it, and he said he felt like killing himself. He got worse, but he cannot say no to it. So he
has to take it. It makes him feel worse, but he knows that the government is on his back now. Once in the system, always in the system.
Yes.
The other thing too that has been going on for many decades there is the active de-Christianization. I think that is really accomplished in Sweden.
Mm. Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
My daughter goes to a church nursery, so it's a church that is having a nursery also on the side. Mm-hmm. So it's more like private. But even that, I can tell the churches are not what churches used to be. Mm-hmm. And they are extremely small groups, even though where I live in Jönköping is like churches everywhere, but you don't really see people going to church except the older generations. Yeah, there are very few now, because I think Sweden has one of the highest old generations there is in Europe. So, and also that's one reason why they have to be extremely open to immigration, because they tell the people the population is too old. Mm-hmm. They don't have enough people in the workforce, young people in the workforce. But, that does not make any sense, because most young people in Sweden are also sterile. So how is that adding up? But then, then you read the UN survey about the sterilization, and Alan explained a lot about it, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. It makes sense that, Swedish people are supposed to have less children. And the ones that even have children, they are doing this artificial fertilization. That is so common here that it's a bit scary, because people don't really question the technique or whether, does it have any effect on the children or not. It is just about, we want a child and they are going to help us get a child, but why are people not able to have a child? It's a big number. And it's too common. So when I observe Sweden and I read Brave New World, watch the movie, and I'm like, this is exactly a copy paste. Mm-hmm. It's exactly a copy paste, and the fact that they even when it comes to employment, if you study one area, they think you are incapable of doing a different area, so you are stuck in that category for the rest of your life. And they are so strict when it comes to what you have learned before. Mm-hmm. But because it means you can't learn anything else.
Right. Mm-hmm. And now I want to just mention a couple of other things that you mentioned in an email, but about how Sweden kind of takes the lead in certain areas.
Yeah.
You remember when, Alan has been covering the coming chipping, the brain chip, whatever, the neural implants for forever. Yeah. Since the very beginning, it's in his books, it's been through all of his talks. But when he supports that with news coverage, what we find is that almost all of the trialing of chips and implants under the skins, or even tattooing for nightclubs, that has been trialed first or very early in Sweden. Yeah. And they've already adopted in many places, workplaces and so forth, biometrics or an implant under the skin as means to gain entry into their place of employment. That's common. I think it's pretty common now in Sweden, is it not?
Yeah. I think the Swedish, in Sweden, they are extremely technology driven, let's say. So, now where I live, everybody has a digital door, let's say. Mm-hmm. And people are more, now they have to use a tag. And then later on, it's like, okay, a tag is too much work. I'm going to use a Wi-Fi from my phone to unlock my door.
A tag is just the thing that they wave, right? Like it's a thing on a keychain or whatever. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So people are always thinking about the easiest way to do things, but they're not really thinking about the consequences towards it. And for me, that was one of the big shocks when I came here in 2011, because I went to a shop and I I went to buy a mobile SIM card, and then I put cash on the table, and the woman said, no cash here. And it was extremely surprising, because if you are doing accounting, cash is the real money, not the digital currency. So I was like, are you sure? Because this is real cash. She said, no, we don't accept cash in this shop. And this was 2011. And now you cannot use cash in most shops, except the grocery shops, let's say. So they are extremely driven with technology. And when the virtual reality headset came about, people are so driven by this virtual world that they need to be able to have the latest fashion going on. And I think that is extremely driven into it. To have the latest fashion going on, the latest fashion is always technology.
Right. It has been for a long time, it's the MP, back to the days of the boombox or whatever, then you got your MP3 player, and then you've got your iPhone and your tablet, and now your Apple Watch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you're just not cool if you're not attired in the latest technological fashion wear. There are some things that you mentioned in an email the other day when you said that, yes, you would like to talk with me. But before we get into a few more things that are going on in Sweden, so Ghana to Cyprus, Cyprus military, the realization in a way that you're an individual, even though you may not have the words for it until you find Alan. But we missed an entire continent. We missed a country. So you want to tell us about your university? Yeah,
I think during my time in military, I had to do it for 12 months. So I just wanted to find somewhere else to go, something different. I thought about the language, so I decided that I need to find some education in the UK. And then I chose accounting because it was something I thought it was straightforward in a way when I was in high school. So I decided to apply for a few universities, and I got into one, and it was in Southampton. During my time there, it was also a completely different experience, of course, because the idea you have of the UK is on the screens is totally different from the reality. And when I was in a place like Southampton, it was extremely peaceful compared to what I've heard about the UK. I had the chance to work as an international tour guide for international students, and I remember the lecture or the introduction week. The material they were giving to them is like, don't go to this spot, don't go to that spot, it could be extremely dangerous. And I just walked from there not some minutes ago, and I thought it was completely fine. So they made everything sound so dangerous, and it's so bad, and it's so this and it's so that. But in a way, I saw the UK as an extremely unlively place to be. It just felt so. The idea of the UK, people are so educated and forward thinking and so on. I expected so much from that, but the reality I got was that it was not people that were so aware of everything. It was more like most people were extremely unaware of most things, and it was just football. That's it. All you hear is football, but people did not know anything about that, or most people did not talk about anything about football. And that was strange, because I thought I could learn so much going to the UK, and the culture was so un-UK-like when you read about the UK, let's say. I think that also got to do with the fact that they try to not make people think too much about the important things, and it's rather let them talk about the trivias and so on. So I can't remember a good conversation I had with people in the UK, except maybe at the university debates, which at that time we were discussing about globalism. And I had to write an assignment about that. And there was a little hiccup for me, because the assignment was to talk about why it would be great to globalize the world and have the same system, same accounting system, same introducing good culture, same human rights, all the good stuff. But doing that, I came across that, wait a minute, looking at my culture or looking at the cultures I've experienced is so different that it will not work here, or here will not work there. So why would we even want to have the same system in the whole world? So there, for a second, I was thinking to myself, globalism is not good. And I didn't know too much about that topic either. So, but for me, it did not sound so good. And I wrote a little bit against it. And of course, I got the consequences by not getting good grades for it. Yeah, because I think it was pretty clear what you are supposed to do and argue for the points of it. And I could not go beyond that, because I thought it was not a good thing. And the way it was portrayed was that you should explore any country and introduce any system as long as you're able to emulate a better culture. And that totally destroyed it for me, because I'm coming from different cultures with different histories, with, countries being taken over because their culture was not as superior as others, and so on. So what made me think the most was that then which culture is the best out of all these cultures? And I could not understand how people or it could be decided that one culture is superior to others, because there were so many differences in the cultures. Yeah, so in the UK, I tried so much to understand, but I just could not wrap my head around it, why things were the way they were.
It's an interesting... Go ahead.
Yeah, I could not stay there for too long, because I just felt that it was not what I thought it would be.
Just speaking to the point that you make about which culture is superior, or even the idea that they give us about multiculturalism. See, with multiculturalism, the lie is that everybody gets to keep their culture, and you just have groups of people with their culture getting along in some kind of airy-fairy way that is never elaborated, or we don't really know how that would work. But that's the lie of multiculturalism, because what multiculturalism is to destroy all cultures, cultures. Yeah. And there is no superior culture. All that remains is a monoculture.
Yep.
And the monoculture is the one that is agreed on at the top, that all differences are denied.
Yep.
Eventually they get to that point. Right now, in many places, like in the United States, we're still in the, this whole othering and the upside down and the vilification, white privilege of vilification of people and a lifting up of other people. But the end goal is monoculture.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I understood. Because it just was not accepting other beliefs or other cultural views. It was just one way. Yeah. So I did not buy that.
Well, you finished university there in Southampton, and at some point, though, I think while you were still in university, you had a trip back home to see your mother and stepfather in Cyprus, and it was there that you met a woman from Sweden.
Yes. And I think the strange part is that Cyprus has a a holiday resort town, let's say. I think when I was young and growing up in Cyprus, I used to hear a lot of stories about it and so on. And when I finished high school, I went there with my friends to see how it's like. And I mean, now, knowing all I know, it feels like one of those Adam Curtis documentaries when it was showing the Berlin cultural creation times.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything was so open and there was no wrong in those places. And the fashion, the music, the way things were, it was so... I could not picture this in any other country except that place and a few other islands, which they are known as a party island. But it's just, now looking back, it just feels like a place where anything goes kind of culture. And this is just a specific place. But when I was there, it was so funny to observe because I'm so not used to this kind of atmosphere, and I could see people, behaving in a strange way. I mean, because I haven't experienced this, but it just felt like it's a very great place to create whatever culture. And there are no consequences, let's say.
Again, you're talking about a kind of a Brave New World scenario. I assume you're speaking of promiscuity, immodesty, basically the breaking down of all social moral norms.
Yeah. And it's so strange because when you speak to people that come there, and in the UK they have many music describing the place as a place where, you just go to have fun, and it's so known between other countries that, those places are a place where you go to, experience that.
Lord of mercy. Look,
So, growing up, I did not know that this place existed in that sense. I just know that it's it has a nice beaches, and you could go there, and it has one of the nicest clear waters or sea. So you could see the stones in the ground, and it's so beautiful. But it's mostly filled with people coming from the UK.
Mm-hmm. The roof is on fire. We don't need no water, let them things that burn. Let them things that burn.
And it's like when you go to that part of the island, it's just the totally different language. You don't hear Greek anymore. All you hear is another language, different languages except Greek. And even because I was kind of a local, when I go there with some friends, they don't even feel like it's their country. It's like a totally different country to them.
I want to party hard. This me want party hard. Me I go party hard. I say me now party hard. Me I go party hard. I say me now party hard. Me want to party hard. I say me now party hard. Start.
So it was so strange that I met somebody from that place. It was extremely strange.
But you did, and she was a young Swedish woman on holiday.
Yeah.
And, okay, so you met her, you liked her, then she went back to Sweden and you went back to the UK for university.
No, because I had just finished my university. You had finished,
okay.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah, we met, and then I think she was there for a month, because now that I realize in Sweden you can work the whole year, but you get 1 month of vacation, paid vacation. So what people do is they get out of the country, because it could be, if the summer is not great, you want to experience the summer. Mm-hmm. So she was there for her summer vacation. So that's how we met. And then I was there because I tried to find a job in the UK and it just was not working out. Because when I finished university, I just lost the drive to do what I studied for, which is accounting. It just felt like, do I really want to sit through papers and just sit on computer and just calculate? It's just, there was no meaning. I don't know, maybe because I was getting old, but the meaning was so shallow for me that I just could not have the courage to actually work with it. So I went back to Cyprus to try and get some break from that, to look for jobs and so on. And then a friend of mine called me and asked me, do you want to come and work here? And my mom was like, no, don't go there. That's not a good place to go to. But I just felt like I've always been a person that had so much control of myself. So I felt like I could trust myself to go there and only think about working a job, let's say.
To the party area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that the party part, I could not do it too much. But for me, that was also a good experience because I was able to observe so much from that. And how different people that I've met there, how different they ended up now, in a way. Because I was able to meet so many people on holidays, and you would have them on Facebook when you meet and so on. So now I could even see people that I met during those times, and if I see how their lives are, it's so strange to observe also.
They've fallen into that kind of party life and never left it?
Yeah, more like they become single parents in a way. Yeah.
So you, in an unlikely place, found a woman that, and this, you've been together now, how long?
Yeah, since we met. So I have to remember now.
About 2009, 10?
11.
Oh, so you basically, you went to Sweden right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the choice, when we met, I think after 1 month of talking and so on, she had to go back and she asked me, do you want to come and live in Sweden with me? And I was like, I don't know, but the UK is also an option. And she said, no, I could not leave my family in Sweden. But I've always been the person traveling around, so I was like, okay, I know the UK, I know Cyprus, and I think I would like to try Sweden. But of course I knew, the only thing I knew about Sweden was the climate and how cold it was. So, yeah, I said, okay, let's just try this. And of course, I'm extremely lucky, so it's worked out pretty well for me.
Now this is and a question that I have about you've been married. You got married. You had 2 children, right? That you got married, but you've been married not too long.
No, and also of course it's because of how do you say it? How I understood marriage in a way, and I think when I started growing up and observing people that were married, it was, of course, in the future I would love to be married, but the more I grew up and the more I knew, it did not mean so much to me in that sense, because once I understood why marriage was introduced, then the meaning had to change for me. And I think that's one of the things that kept happening to me. You could say that I was breaking out of the indoctrination in a way, because when Alan speak about marriage, let's say, and the meaning behind it, and the introduction of marriage by the Catholic Church to keep people tied together because of a certain agenda. I knew I had to find my own meaning to it. So for me, when that decision came, it was extremely different than what was given to me or what I observed.
It wasn't because it was a socially required.
Yeah.
It had to
Exactly.
be the connection. So you are an individual, but you also have some, because of your experiences and your travels, you can really see the Brave New World agenda, what is happening to families, what is happening to marriages.
Yeah.
Your wife pointed out, I want you to mention really quickly when you went to the sporting event. Soccer, was it?
Yeah. Yes, football.
Football. Yeah, because you were noticing that the Swedish people, the team, none of the fans there to support the Swedish football team were wearing Swedish colors or their team's jersey or anything like that, and you asked your wife about it. What did she say?
Yeah, she said that they would brand them as Swedish nationalists. So they were racist, basically. If you are wearing the Swedish or holding the Swedish flag in public areas, you will be branded as Swedish Democrat, because they have the same flag or the same colors. But then that makes sense because the Swedish flag is yellow and blue. So it did not make any sense to brand somebody based on the color of the flag. Mm-hmm.
But this is, again, one of these things where you see just how many years, generations, really, the social engineering has been at work on the Swedish people. But you did meet and marry a woman who had a strong identity, if maybe not as a Swedish woman, but she had a strong connection to her family. That was very important. But you must be, with your thinking, your thinking is so unusual compared to what is all around her. How does she respond to that? How does she respond to you thinking outside the box, outside the matrix?
I think that is where I would say that, Alan's talk really helped me, because when he had this talk where it was about the gender conflicts, let's say. Mm-hmm. And also he spoke about marriage and the fact that you are driven because of your hormones, and then later on you realize the stranger next to you. and then of course he also mentioned that if he had no foundation to stand on, it would be broken. So in a way, I had that on the back of my mind, because she is not as open about understanding as I am, let's say. So the big thing I took from Alan was that you have to also not be a tyrant and let people try to be like you and try to change to be like you. So in a way, I became more comfortable with myself, that I didn't need her to change to be like me or understand me. But I wanted her, or she should always see that the best thing I want is for my family, let's say.
Mm-hmm. For the YouTube listeners, there's about 8 or 10 more minutes that you might want to visit cuttingthroughthematrix.com so that you can find out where to hear the last 10 minutes of this conversation. All right, so I want to thank you, Michael, for talking with me and sharing some of your background and your story. It's very interesting. And I look forward, I hope that you'll have the time and interest to talk to me down the line a little bit. We can talk a bit more about cultural changes, things going on in Sweden, because it's very interesting. And I thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, and for everybody else, I will be back next week, and I will have someone to talk to that I also think that you'll find quite interesting. So thank you for joining us, and take care.
Well, I got something